Dynamite Network presents Football Time.
Welcome to the Football Time Podcast. We're ready to get into a new college football season, and we're going to start out with our college football preview. We're going to start out with the MAC and the Sun Belt, and each and every Thursday we're going to have two new conferences. Next week we're going to be doing Conference USA and the American Conference, the AAC, but today it's all about the Midwest and the South. With us as always to preview our college football expert, Dynamite David.
Hey there, really excited to be here. Glad for a full regular football season. Been anticipating it for a long time, ready to get into it.
Yeah, we are back. We got a full season, maybe fans in the stands, and hopefully not too many COVID postponements, possibly forfeits. I think the teams are going to get maybe a little forfeiture, but full season upon us, and we're back on the Greenlight Network after a moving of studios. But we're ready to go and start unveiling all our shows coming up in the next couple of weeks with our college football preview. And then in a couple of weeks, we get Achilles Rain and do our NFL previews as well. So look forward to that. Let's get into the MAC with Dynamite David first. All right, we're going to start out with one of the top teams in the MAC. A little bit of some change here, though. Coach Lane Leopold left just a couple months ago to head to Kansas and left Buffalo a little bit high and dry here, but Buffalo has been one of the top teams in the MAC since Lane Leopold took over, and really been one of the top teams in the MAC since Turner Gale took over about 10 to 15 years ago. So what do you make of this Buffalo Bulls team? Their win total sits at 8. Where do you have them going?
Well, you say top teams in the MAC. Last year, maybe. I don't know about your projections on this season, but I think they're going to be they're going to fall back, middle of the pack here. I think coach leaving that late, entire new staff coming in after spring practice. They also lost 10 more players to the transfer portal. They managed to get 6 wins in 7 games last year. I don't even have them getting 6 in 12 games this year, so I think it's going to be a huge fallback for Buffalo. They may recover in a few years. They've got a strong ground game, but I'm not so sure about that defense and their passing game, and I just don't see them repeating what they did last season.
Yeah, this is it befuddled me a little bit here because they still have a lot of elite players, especially on the MAC level, even with their transfers. But with Lane leaving, and it wasn't just Lane, it was the whole coaching staff. They bring in a whole new coaching staff. They bring in a coach who has really no experience at all. More of a defensive-minded coach based on his, assistant coaching experience. You don't know how that's going to play out in the MAC, which is, very, very high offense, as you found out last year.
I love me some action.
Really into the Tuesday, Wednesday action. But I'm with you. I have them on the under. I only have them at 5 wins here. But it was very hard for me to sort of filter out their wins and losses because they do have, like you said, I think their ground game will be good again even without Jarrett Patterson on the loss. Their quarterback is once again going to be very good. Their receivers might not be quite as great, but they're more of a option type running team anyway.
Yep.
They still have some really, really fast, aggressive defensive guys even out of the transfer portal. So, high-end talent-wise in the MAC, they're there, but you just don't know with all this coaching changes what level they're going to be. And I just marked them down as an under 5 wins here.
One thing I noticed, one recurring theme throughout the MAC this year, and a lot of these smaller conferences I think we're going to see a lot, is returning starters. And everybody in the MAC has 18, 19, 20 returning starters. This team only has 10 returning starters off that team from last year. So I think they're the outlier there, and I think that's going to show up in their record for sure.
Yeah. Schedule-wise, I really only saw 3 guaranteed wins on their schedule. Wagner, Bowling Green, Northern Illinois. But I didn't see any guaranteed losses on their schedule either. I think there were a lot of 50-50 sort of games that's what makes it a little weird. You probably mark Nebraska down as a loss, but
Coastal Carolina.
I have no clue what Nebraska is. Coastal Carolina you mark down as a loss, but I think if these two teams had played last year, it probably would have been a pretty tight game. So that one's early in the year, so we're going to probably find out pretty quick how good this Buffalo team is with their back-to-back versus Nebraska and Coastal Carolina.
Yeah. They've also got Ball State on the road at the end of the year.
That was the other thing. Their MAC schedule, I think, more than anything, at Kent State, at Miami of Ohio, at Ball State, and also that little tricky game at Old Dominion. It doesn't sound like a tough game, but that team has always been able to put up points. Stopping someone, that's always been a little bit of a question, but they would fit right in the MAC. But I have them at 5 wins overall. What did you put them down as?
I also have them going 5-7. I'm taking the under -125, under 8 wins.
Yeah. Overall, they were the favorite to win the MAC, odds-wise at +300. Did you see any value in that? I don't see a lot of value in that with so many sort of questions about this team and a schedule that I didn't think breaks kindly for them. All right, Ball State, the defending MAC champions. Now, in 2019, they got off to an 0-4 start, and since then, they have been 12-2. Mike New was about to lose his job, and now he's got a contract extension. Isn't college football quite wonderful? But I think we're both pretty high on this team. The schedule seems pretty easy other than a little bit of a tricky early slate there. Really, really good offensive team here. What do you make of Ball State?
Yeah, I really like this Ball State team. Drew Plitt was able to stay healthy last year. I think if he needs to stay healthy, I was looking at their quarterback depth chart. They have nothing behind him, so any kind of injury there, that could turn their season upside down. But as long as he stays healthy, I could see them going through the schedule. Like you said early on, I think Penn State's obviously at Penn State could be a challenge. And at Wyoming, I wouldn't sleep on that either. That's quite the road game. So.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about early. That Western Illinois game should be a win, but Western Illinois has been a good 2A team, and early in the season you can never really take those games lightly. But I put that one as a win, certainly. But I didn't put Penn State or Wyoming as losses. Yeah. Because, one, I want to see what Penn State is. I think if we learned anything from their season last year, we don't just pencil them in as some offensive juggernaut who can maybe take a little bit of advantage of this Ball State team. But going to Penn State and then the next week going to Wyoming, and then you play Toledo, and then Army. That's a little stretch where really I think their season will be determined, but it won't necessarily be determined in the MAC. Because those are all non-conference games except for the Toledo game.
Yeah, and even following that up with Western Michigan, that whole front half of their schedule is tough, and then they've got a pretty easy ride. Miami, Ohio is not a cupcake, but they got a few in there, and then finishing off the season with Buffalo that we just talked about earlier. But I really like this Ball State team. I think they're going to continue on their success from last year. 20 returning starters, so looking good for them. And they're actually my favorite out of the MAC this season.
I really liked them out of the MAC. A couple questions I had about them. Quarterback play has been solid, but it's not been... I wouldn't put him as the elite quarterbacks in the MAC. There are a couple others who I find really... If he can make maybe a leap, this is his senior year. If he can make a jump and really propel them, they're wide receivers. They got 3 guys who are really, really, really good wide receivers and should take advantage in the MAC. The other concern a little bit, they lost some O-line guys. And as much as you might like the wide receivers and the quarterback and the running backs, if no one is blocking, all of a sudden all that sort of shatters, and that makes me a little nervous. The defense is solid, if unspectacular. MAC-wise, it's probably an elite defense, but I think that'll probably hurt them a little bit when they play those non-conference games at Penn State, at Wyoming. I have them at 9 wins. What did you have them
I've got them with 10 wins.
No, you got them at 10 wins.
So easily going over the win total of 7.5. So I really like that over -110. I think that's a solid over. Even if they lose a couple that I don't have them winning, they're still going to be comfortably over that 7.5.
I think that 7.5 is really low. Once again, like Buffalo, I didn't have any guaranteed losses on the schedules. So I had a lot of 50-50 games in there. Penn State, Wyoming, Toledo, Army, Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, and Buffalo, and then Western Illinois. Miami of Ohio, Akron, and Northern Illinois as wins. So they got 4 wins. You probably pencil in right off the bat.
Yeah.
They need 4 more out of those games really to go. And it'll be very interesting, that Penn State game, to see what sort of Penn State team comes and what sort of Ball State team comes to play here. But now they are plus 350 to win the MAC, the second favorite. I really like them. There's just so much depth in the MAC that 350 doesn't quite tickle my fancy if I'm going to hold a bet for 6 months there.
I didn't take that one. I don't think that was quite good enough value, even though they are my favorites. I think there's about 4 or 5 teams right there at the top that could get it, and some of the other teams I think have a little bit better value there.
Any national championships hope is 50,000?
No, I don't think so.
Well, you had them at 10 wins. I didn't know if we were a win over Penn State. Maybe we start talking about it. We're going to move on to probably, I think, one of the most interesting teams here in Central Michigan. Jim McElwain, 3rd season here. They've been solid, and they look to be solid again. Is there a chance that they go beyond solid, or do you think they hit right at that flat line? Win total at 6.5, which pretty much says solid team.
I think they've got a pretty tough schedule. They did bring in Washington transfer quarterback Jacob Sermon. I think he'll be their starter for sure. This one, they've kind of been a wild card for me in the MAC here. They've got a lot of games that are kind of those 50-50 games. I've got them losing more than winning more of those 50-50 games. But the first 3 or 4 games are really tough to get out of. Again, they're with non-conference games at Missouri, at LSU. So if they can survive those and still have a little momentum going into the MAC schedule, they may be able to recover. But I don't like them getting over that win total of 6.5.
I'm very curious about that opening game at Missouri. Missouri's getting a lot of hype. Call me a skeptic. But I'm curious to see how they come out in that one. I think we'll get a good level of where they're at. If they get blown out, I think we're looking at probably 5-6 wins. If they're able to win that game, I think they might be able to make that jump to 7 or 8. You mentioned the quarterback transferring from Washington. We think he's going to be the starter. He was a big-time prospect going into Washington. Now the fact that he never won the job might signal how good he really is, but it should be interesting. I think their defense might be able to jump up a little bit, and if you can find a way to defend in the MAC, I think you can figure out how to win games here. But I don't know if the quarterback play is going to be good. You just don't know about the Washington kid. He could turn out to be one of the best players in the MAC, or they could be rotating quarterbacks, sort of like they've done the last couple of years. I had them under their win total of 6.5, but I had it right there at 6. So I think their schedule is just a little too difficult to really, say they're going to hit 7 wins. But I don't think they fall much below that 6-win mark.
I've got them a little lower than you. I've got them only going 4-8 this season. So I'm not as big on McElwain and the Chippewas this season.
You probably have them losing games at like Western Michigan and Ball State and Toledo. I put those in my 50-50 category. Now, I think I marked them down as losses, but I think they can hang with those teams. Whether they can beat those teams, I don't really know. All right, we're going to move on. Oh, I didn't do the conference championship. They're at 500. I didn't see any value in that whatsoever. 4th favorite. I just think their schedule's too hard. Did you want any action?
No, I'm not taking any action there on Central Michigan to win the MAC.
I think my skipping them probably summed everything up right there. All right, we're going to move on to one of the MAC powers, traditional powers in the MAC, the Toledo Rockets. Toledo, really high over-under here, 8.5. Now, this is a very, very good team, and it's been really a very good team in the MAC for, 20 years now. So, where do you have the Toledo Rockets here?
Well, they've got a good couple non-conference tests early on in the season with at Notre Dame and then Colorado State at home in weeks 2 and 3. I think those are going to be really good tests for this team. I'm curious to see who's going to become the clear front runner at quarterback. They had Carter Bradley, who shared some time with DeQuan Finn, their dual threat quarterback last year, but they also bring in Georgia Tech transfer Tucker Gleason, who may end up taking
Yes.
the role outright to get there. But once they get past those opening games, Ball State in Week 4, they've kind of got a little bit of an easy road there up until Ohio in the next to the last
Yes.
week of the season. But their schedule is very favorable, I think, other than the Notre Dame and Colorado State games. But
Yes.
MAC's schedule looks pretty good in my opinion. And I've got them right around their win total. I think they're going to pull it out and get those 9 wins.
You think they're going to get? I had them at 8 wins, right there. A couple of questions. You mentioned the quarterback situation. I don't think they know who's going to start yet. They probably think they know, but I think that's going to change. But really, with this Toledo offense, I mean, it's sort of plug and play with their quarterback position. Running back wise, Toledo always has a really good running back. And they probably bring in the best running back in the MAC in Mac Bryant or Kovac Jr., who was a Kentucky guy who transferred there.
They also have a very solid offensive
Yes.
line. So.
My concern here, as always in the MAC, defense. Now, it made a jump last year and was solid, but I don't know how to sort of gauge last year. They played 6 games, and, you could see it in the scores when they played very bad teams. The defense looked really good. And then when they got, versus the Buffaloes and stuff, that defense started to break a little bit. And I wonder if that defense continues to improve or sort of settles back to where it was the last couple of years when they were winning 7 and 6 games instead of their normal 8, 9, 10 games.
Well, one thing to look at, and I've already mentioned it, whether you think it'll make a difference or not, all 11 starters on defense returning this season.
That's correct.
So hopefully you'd think, a year extra experience under all their belts that they would improve at least some. But that's also a theme across the board throughout the conference, so it may not make that much of a difference.
I was curious, the Colorado State game, did you have that as a win for them or a loss for them?
I have them splitting. I have them losing at Notre Dame and
Yes.
then getting that win at home against Colorado State.
I see. I think that's where we sort of. I might have marked it down a lot. I put it as a 50-50 because I don't know what to expect out of Colorado State. You never know what to expect out of Colorado State. You think they're going to win 2 games, they end up winning 10 in a year. You think they're going to win 10, and they win like 2. So.
Well, it was a pretty close game the last time they
Yes.
played in 2019,
Yes.
so Toledo pulled that one out. So I expect this one to be another tight one.
But I think that's our win difference right there.
I think I give Toledo the edge there simply because they're the home team, so I like that.
Yes. So Toledo, I have them at 8 wins. You have them just over at 9 wins. Now their odds plus 450. Now this is it piqued my interest. They are in the hard side of the bracket in the MAC, so it'll be a little bit of a battle. But 450, does that nip your taste buds a little bit?
I think I probably will jump on this 450 a little bit. I think their MAC schedule is very favorable, and I think they could have a good shot at being in that championship game come the end of the season.
Yeah. All right. We're going to move on to the other power in the MAC the last 15, 20 years, and that's the Ohio Bobcats. Now, their win total sits at 6.5. Now, they've had a little bit of a change here. Frank Solich left, I believe, about a month, maybe 2 months ago. He retired. They bring in the offensive coordinator who's been there basically
the whole time.
Basically, and technically speaking, I don't know how many coaches get hired, but his last head coaching job, he went 13-0 at Northwestern Oklahoma Baptist and won the NAIA championship. So they are technically bringing in a championship coach. Now that was in 1994 that he won that title, and I'm not quite sure what division NAIA Northwest Oklahoma Baptist is.
I think the stability on this staff, the smooth transition when Solich retired, I don't think him leaving is going to have much of an effect on this team at all. And I was just talking about favorable schedules with Toledo. I love Ohio's schedule.
Yes.
I think it lines up very well for Ohio to have a successful season. They got a couple tough non-conference games. I actually like them going. They host Syracuse week 1. I think they can get that win. But they've got a couple in weeks 3 and 4 at Louisiana, at Northwestern. Those are tough, but if they can get back on the horse starting that MAC conference schedule after those 2 games, I think they could go on a real good run and maybe win outright the rest of the MAC schedule.
It's a pretty favorable early MAC schedule, too. at Akron, and then a couple home games right there, other than the at Buffalo game. And both of us were a little down on Buffalo, so maybe they can get off to that hot start in the MAC and ride that. I had them over at 8 wins. My only questions, one, is the coaching staff. Can Tim coach them? Or, Frank Solich has been there so long, you just don't know what that transition's going to be like. And it being, so late or early, I don't know which part we're going through here, late or early into the season, the change. But since it's sort of somebody who's been there, I look at that. My other question is quarterback. They have really, really good skill position guys. They have a pretty solid defense. I don't know about quarterback. It just scares me a little bit.
Especially in the high offensive MAC
yes,
that they're going to be playing.
I mean, you need a good quarterback. Now, they have a couple guys who, have promise, but until you see that out there on the MAC, and if you aren't capable of scoring 30, 35 points in the MAC, you're going to have trouble winning some of those games versus the elite teams. But I really do have them at 8 wins, going way over that 6.5 win mark. I thought that was really, really low.
Yeah, I really like the over here. I've got them going 9 wins, 9-3, and 2 of those losses being non-conference. So I've got them only 1 loss in the MAC, which is why I also really, really like the plus 750 conference champs, because I think the likelihood of them ending up in that championship game are also very high.
That was my next question. At plus 750,
Yep.
I think that's the best one on the board, really right there. All right, let's move on to one of those offensive juggernauts we were talking about.
Yep.
And that's Western Michigan. Very interesting team here. We mentioned the quarterback at Ohio. Western Michigan doesn't have any questions at quarterback. I think Obi is probably the best quarterback in the league. I really like this game. I like Western Michigan's offense a whole lot. I like Tim Lester. I think this is a dark horse to win the MAC. Defensively, there are questions, though, and I think that's where this 6-win total, I was really shocked when I saw the 6-win total. I thought that was really, really low. Now you start to look at their schedule.
It's rough.
There were more 50-50 and loss games on there that I wanted to put on there. But I think once they get into MAC, they should be one of the top 2-3 teams easily.
I'm not so sure. I don't see any relief in this schedule until the back end. They open up at Michigan. Week 3, they're at Pittsburgh. They host San Jose State, which I've actually got that down as a loss. And then at Buffalo, and then they host Ball State, Kent State at Toledo.
And then that bye. Now, that was if they can sort of get through and manage that first part of the schedule and be in the mix, those last 4, I think they're going to cruise. But I don't know if they are going to be able to handle that first 4. I think the San Jose State game, it'll be really, really telling. If they can win that game, that will help them. San Jose State does travel to them, but it's in September, so it probably won't be too cold in Michigan quite yet.
Yeah, I've got them losing 3 of those first 4, and I think that's going to just take them down a little bit too much, and I don't know if they'll be able to recover and have a strong next season.
The other thing is the Illinois State game. You see that, you mark it as a win, but that's another good sub-conference team. So that's not necessarily a win. I don't think the talent disparity is like, Grand Canyon-wise in there, and if you have a bad day, they can go in there and win that one too. Yeah. I think that's the question on them.
I think they very much have the toughest schedule in the MAC.
I had them at 7 wins, right over their 6. The reason I do like them, O-line, D-line, both good. Secondary, very, very poor. But I think they can sort of maybe take advantage of games like your Kent State, who I know we're going to get to, and you maybe bully them a little bit. I'm very curious about the Buffalo game at Buffalo. That's a tough place to win, but if maybe they can swing that one and sort of split that Buffalo, Ball State, Kent State, Toledo, and go 2-2. I think they're winning probably those last 4 there.
I'm going to take the push here at 6. I'm not quite as high on them as you. I think the reason why I think they're going to get 6, maybe even less. 2 years ago, the last time we had a full regular season, They had 4 losses by 7 points or
Yes,
less, and even last season they blew some games.
Close games. They are not your friend.
So looking at this schedule, if they're going to find themselves in some close games, if they can't get over that hump, it's going to be another rough season.
Yes, definitely so. It's 800 for them to win the conference. I don't know if I bet on it, but that at 800, that's a nice one there. If they can sort of manipulate their way through the schedule, I do wish they were on the other side. However, because we're going to start getting to some of those teams. If you notice, the really, really bad ones we're about to hit on.
We're about to get to my favorites here.
Yes. All right. Next up, I think we mentioned it. I think this is your favorite. I think it's one of my favorite too, because I really like the coach, Sean Lewis. I really think he's a really good coach, and this probably, if this team does well, probably his last year there before he makes a move into the more higher up Big Five conferences. But Kent also sitting at a pretty low level of wins here. Their schedule also pretty tough, especially early on. Kent at 5.5 wins. Western Michigan's offense is really good. Kent State's offense is really, really good. And it's a lot more plug and play. They just scheme you to death, and they can pretty much put whoever in there and really dominate the game.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think they've got the best player in the conference playing their quarterback. Dustin Crum. NFL scouts are already watching this guy. I think he could be a top 3 round draft pick, maybe even a first round pick. He's the real deal. Sean, you said this already, Sean Lewis. He's a real up-and-coming head coach. He's the youngest in FBS at only 35 years old. But I think they're going to be looking for their first conference championship since 1972. Yes. Now, I have the win record isn't quite as good as I had a Ball State.
Yes.
But I think that's simply because their non-conference schedule is just brutal.
Yes.
Starting out at A&M, you get VMI at home, but then you have to go to at Iowa, at Maryland. Now, if they can get their heads on straight after those 4, I could legitimately see them running through their MAC schedule without a loss. So that's why I'm really big on the Golden Flashes this year. I think they're going to be there, and like you said, this coach is probably going to be getting quite the promotion after this season.
Well, I don't think they have a chance at A&M or Iowa. I put those as losses, but the Maryland one I stared at. The only thing I think you can say negative about Kent State and their sort of air raid style offense, their defense can be quite poor.
They've been right there. Last year they were right there in a lot of games. No defense whatsoever. If they could just have some semblance of any kind of defense, they're going to really take a jump this year.
Well, that's if they can get 1 or 2 stops. They are scoring on the other side of the ball. I even think they're scoring versus elite teams. They run that type of offense where they can put up points. Now, whether they can stop any of those elite teams, I don't know. But I believe they did get like a 60 or a 70 hung up on them at a point last year.
Those over-unders might be fun to
yes.
bet on this season.
Well, I know you like to ride those until I think they started getting up in the 80s. And then you were like, this is ridiculous. But Kent State, I have them over.
Oh, yes.
Barely over. 7 wins. I don't think they can get to the 8 because that schedule's so tough. Once again, they're on the tough side of the bracket in the MAC. And, I put down at Western Michigan, at Ohio, at Central Michigan. Those are all going to be tough games to go into somebody else's place and win no matter how good your offense is. Mm-hmm. And you just never know if you're going to drop those. And that's,
I think that at Ohio is probably the biggest game they've got on their schedule.
Definitely so.
But yeah, I've got them going 8 wins. I think they can get to that, but easily covering that 5.5. I think if you can still get that number 5.5 to take that bet, I think they're going to cover that 5.5. And I'm going to take a stab at the plus 1,200.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Plus 1,200.
Yeah, it's good value.
I think this easily is the best offense in the MAC, which is saying something. Schedule is very tough, but I think at 12-1, it might hit that number if they can maybe spring something in a couple of those road games, slip in, a win, maybe at Western Michigan, at Central Michigan. It'll be tough, but I think 12-1's pretty decent value there. All right, we're going to go to one of my favorite dark horse teams. And speaking of teams that are all offense and no defense, Eastern Michigan. Really, really like their offensive side of things. Really like their quarterback. The problem is they literally don't play any defense at all. But they do have a lot of defensive starters returning. That's always the question, though. If your defense is bad, is it good to have all your defensive starters returning? So what do you make of Eastern Michigan here?
I was looking. I think they're going to finish right around that win total, 6.5. This is, like you said, it's a dark horse. You kind of don't know what you're going to get out of this team. I think they're going to be somewhere middle of the road. They can, maybe win a road game they're not supposed to, lose a home game they're not supposed to. I think it's going to be a little give and take on their schedule here. But they do have a lot of tough teams they've got to play. But non-conference isn't too terrible at Wisconsin, Texas State.
Yes.
St. Francis is an opener. I think that's an easy W for them.
And they are not a good team.
And then even at UMass, that's not terrible. So I think they could get around to that win total. I don't think they're going to get quite to the 7 to get the over.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to ride the 5 and the under.
Yeah. I had them right at 7 wins, so I'm going over. But that's saying they're winning at UMass. I don't, as bad as UMass is, I think you found that out last year when they were getting 50s, and you were like, why is this team getting 50s? And I'm like, yeah, they're really bad. And then I think they proceeded to give up like 8 points. But they have to win that game at UMass, and the real swing one is probably that Texas State game. We'll get to them when we get to the Sun Belt later, but I think that's another wild card team, just like Eastern Michigan. We don't really know quite what we're going to get. They'll probably win some games they shouldn't. They'll probably lose some games they should.
One thing they do have going in their favor, a lot of their tough MAC games are they're hosting this season. They've got Miami at home, they've got Ball State at home, they've got Ohio at home, and Western Michigan at home.
I think that last half, home Western Michigan at Central Michigan, also will sort of flip it. Probably about the same range as Central Michigan. Do you think Central or Eastern probably better?
I'd probably have to say Eastern to give them the slight edge over Central.
I think they're more entertaining, at least. You'll want to tune in for Eastern Michigan.
I tell you what, those high-scoring action games are a lot of fun. I learned that last season.
All right, we'll move on off Eastern Michigan and go to an interesting one. I think we differed a little bit on this one. We're going with Miami of Ohio. They're sitting at a pretty low win total here at 4.5. What do you make of Miami of Ohio?
I actually think they could surprise some people. I thought that win total was surprisingly low at 4.5. I've got them easily going over that. I like 7-5 for their record this year. Now, real tough opening 2 games at Cincinnati. That's tough. Cincinnati's going to be really strong this year. At Minnesota, I think that's a hard place to go in and get a win. But then they come home and got Long Island. But then they're also on the road at Army. So 3 of their 4 non-conference games are on the road. But I think they're really solid. And you know who I'm excited to watch for Miami? Brett Gabbert.
Yeah.
Blaine's brother. I think he could be pretty solid. He's coming into his sophomore season, get a little bit of more experience under his belt. They've got almost all their starters on defense back. But again, we get into their schedule and look, they got Ball State, Ohio, and Kent State all on the road. But I think I think they're good enough to get over that 4.5 for sure.
Yeah, I was on the other end of this. I do agree, Gabbert, really solid quarterback. But my problem with them is I don't think their skill position guys are up to the level of the other MAC guys. If you could trade the Northern Illinois receiver to them, I think I'd probably have them a little bit higher. But I just don't know if they have sort of the weapons to really totally utilize Gabbert. Defense, solid, but not like outstanding. I think I'd have them more if their schedule was a little easier. But I looked at this schedule and I'm like, they could easily, other than the Long Island game, start out like 1-6. I mean, it's not out of the question. Lose Cincinnati, lose Minnesota, lose at Army, and then you got that swing game, Central Michigan, and then you're going to Eastern Michigan before you get to Akron and you're just
Yeah.
I mean, that ball starts rolling downhill, and then you just don't know. I mean, if they could get to that middle part of the season, maybe they could start to string things together, especially if Buffalo isn't what we think they could be. But that front part, when they're also probably trying to find skill position guys to play with Gabbard, I just don't know. I had them under the 4. I had them right at 4 wins. The ones I gave them were Long Island, Akron, and Bowling Green. You got 3 wins there. You only need 2 more.
Well,
but I just struggled to.
That under is pretty solid money at plus 130.
Yes,
too,
I know. I didn't know quite where to put them. I like Eastern Michigan a little better. I might like Central Michigan a little better. I think I gave them a Buffalo win, and that was my 4th right there. And I don't know.
Yeah, I've actually got them beating Central and Eastern Michigan.
Yes.
So I'm a little bigger on Miami than you are.
Definitely so. All right.
We're getting into the good ones.
Are you ready for these? I want in-depth knowledge and their upside, if they have any. We'll probably start with the best of the worst in Northern Illinois, 3.5. This has basically been a sad fall of grace the last 3 years. This team was literally one of the best small schools in the country for about a 20-year stretch, and now they're hovering around the bottoms of the MAC. Their win total sits at 3.5.
Well, they couldn't even manage 1 last year.
Yes, I know.
In the 6-game schedule.
So where are you at 3.5?
I am not big on the Huskies here. I like the under for sure, getting plus 120. I've got them maybe getting 2 wins. That's over Bowling Green and Maine. I think they'll get that Maine win.
Maine's kind of good. I was going to tell you, I put that one in the 50-50s because I was not sold.
If that doesn't say much about your football team, if you're going into playing Maine and it's 50-50, you're probably not that great.
But I did assume Maine, it was probably like 4 or 5 games into their season, so they might take their money and want to try to continue on their subdivision route. So.
But I even look at in Wyoming coming in week 2. I don't think they can beat this Wyoming team.
Definitely not. I had that as a loss for sure.
So I'm going to ride the under here for sure and get the plus 120.
Yeah. I had them at 2 wins. There's not, the defense is awful. The offense is awful. Their receiver is probably the best in the MAC.
Yep.
The problem is there's no one to literally throw him the ball.
Just snap it to Tyrese Ritchie Edwards every time.
Probably all you can do because the quarterback in there is Chad Pennington. That's really an insult to Chad Pennington. He's quite good. But arm strength-wise, the quarterback who theoretically is going to start can't really even throw the ball, over about 10 yards accurately. So
well, and not to mention they have an awful defense.
Well, yes, the defense also. Once again, Northern Illinois' pride and joy as they were rolling through the MAC for 20 years was their defense, and it is just no longer there. Really kind of a sad fall. I don't know how long Thomas Hammock can last there. He's overseen a complete disaster and fall, though they were starting to slide a little bit before he got there. But you can watch the wide receiver. He might make one play a game if they can find a way to get him the ball. Sadly, we're dipping into worse than Northern Illinois next. Should I bring up whether you think they can win the MAC?
We don't even need to bother their odds there.
5,000.
5,000 is not nearly enough value for me to even take a
well,
shot.
These next two, not
Illinois.
even the 20s are good enough here. But we'll go with Akron, 2 wins. Do you have anything on Akron that is meaningful or exciting?
Their coach is in his 3rd season.
That's correct.
Usually see some improvement in their 3rd season. It's a veteran team. They've been there for a little while. A lot of returning starters.
Improvement would be 2 wins since they won 1 game in his 2-year tenure.
I think they can beat Bryant.
That's
and I think the other games circled on the schedule would be at Bowling Green. I think that's
correct.
That's going to be a big game for the Zips to decide who's going to be the
Bowling
bottom.
Green is next.
the bottom of the barrel in the MAC. So I think And then, I'm not so sure on that Temple game. What do you think about that Temple game?
I had that as a loss. I think Temple's got too many.
Even in Akron?
Yeah. There was no way. I was trying to figure out if maybe Temple was really, really bad. They got too many players.
I'm tempted, because I've got them right around that 2-win total.
Yes.
I'm tempted to take the over, just because I see them at least getting the 2. So I'm either leaning push or over than the under. How you leaning?
I am under.
Under?
Because I don't have them win the Bowling Green game. I have them winning Bryant. This probably should sum up my notes on them. They might be able to run the ball. That is all.
Yeah. They're pretty much the weakest in the conference at almost every position.
I honestly think they're worse than Bowling Green. Their defense is awful. Their offense is terrible. Their running back is okay. But their line isn't any good, so I'm not even 100% sold they can beat Bryant. All right, we'll move on to the next worst. Bowling Green at 1.5 wins. I didn't even have a cool note on them that their running back might be okay.
You know what I like here? I like that half point because I've got them winning one game.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the under there. The only game I can see them maybe winning is the Murray State game at home, and then like you said that game between them and Akron. I think that's going to be the swing game. You've got them winning. I've got them losing.
Yes.
So I think I like Akron a little better than Bowling Green.
That being said, I'm not 100% sold. The Murray State game is a lock, and
this is football.
Yes. South Alabama was the other one that theoretically maybe South Alabama's probably a little better, but I mean it's all same level of bottom feeding garbage pretty much. So they have 3 chances to get 2 wins. I put them over at exactly 2 wins.
Well,
I went Murray State and Akron as my 2. They have a couple good defensive linemen was my only note.
Well, I think it's the process they're going through in Bowling Green. They completely wiped the team and the staff. They're going through one of those very slow builds, similar to what Dave Clawson did. So they may start to see results next season or the year after, but this year, don't expect much from Bowling Green.
No, not at all. All right, so that wraps up the MAC. Let's get your final MAC pick. Who do you think will be your MAC champion?
Oh, gosh. I'm looking at a matchup of probably Ball State out of the West. I really like Ball State out of the West. And then I'm really torn between Ohio and Kent State. I like the value in Kent State, but I'm going to have to take Ohio, but with Ball State winning it all. Repeat.
I think I really like the Ball State, but I'm feeling frisky as the bridesmaid of Western Michigan who always finishes second. I'm going to go Western Michigan here.
Digging deep there.
And see if we can get it with a slight nudge. Hopefully Eastern Michigan is really good just so I can watch them play offense because they're very exciting. But right, we're back with the Sun Belt. A lot of really good teams at the top of this conference. Should be really, really good games here in those elite teams matchups. Are you ready to get into the Sun Belt?
Yeah, a little top heavy, but it's a good conference and really solid teams there at the top.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, we're going to start out with one of those solid teams in Louisiana Lafayette. Just Louisiana now, but we're going to call them Lafayette. 9.5 wins. Big win total here. Very interesting team. Sort of a throwback style team. O-line, D-line, a really elite level. Probably Power 5 level. I think if they matched up with low-level Power 5 teams, they would maul them off the floor. So what do you make of Louisiana Lafayette?
I'll tell you what, probably one of the most exciting Week 1 games of the whole college football slate there at Texas. I think this is a really telling game. They went in, took down Ohio State in Week 1 last season. Can they do that again this year? I'm not sure if Texas will be caught off guard, but I think the Raging Cajuns could be a better team than the Longhorns. I look at that game, and I look at the game at Liberty towards the end of the season. I think if they can just get one of those two games, I think this could turn out to be a very...
you could probably put it down now. We don't even have to go to our pick show. I'm probably taking Lafayette in the picks.
Yeah, I've got them down as a W there as well. But I think looking that Liberty game on the road is going to be tough too.
I'm very curious about that, especially weird timing, right at the end of the year, right at the tail end of their conference schedule. But what should be an entertaining TV game.
But I think if they can come out with one win out of those two and then take care of their conference games, they get App State at home, and they don't play Coastal Carolina either. So I think the schedule looks good for them other than those non-conference games. And if they can get one of those two, Texas and Liberty, they can be in a really good position. I've got them easily going over the 9.5
You got them over.
total.
See, I got them under, right at 9 wins
Wow.
here. Now, I think they're much better than that whole side of the Sun Belt. But a couple things do concern me a little bit. You mentioned they're an old school type team, so that meant like last year they played a lot of close games. The year before that, same thing. Now, some of that is to be said is, they ground and pound and run the ball and just sort of got you to death, so it doesn't lend to, huge, big scores like, say, a Coastal Carolina does. But that concerns me a little because when you're in close games, funny things can happen, a fumble here or there, and then you're losing a game. And with that 9.5 win mark, there's not much margin forever. You get one or two losses, and then you're done. And, the Appy State game, we talked about it, is in Lafayette, so that might be hard, but I think I marked that down as a loss. I didn't know what way to go with the Texas game. And I didn't know what to do with the at Liberty game. And you start to mix that in there, and I just didn't like, the odds. I would not personally bet over. I probably wouldn't personally bet under either. I just sort of mapped it out as a 9, but this is really, really a good team. And if you have a chance to watch them play, really entertaining football.
Well, the Dynamite simulation has got them going 11-1. 11-1, Dynamite David right there.
All right, so conference odds-wise, plus 130. That one did not float my boat.
If we were talking West Division,
yes.
I would.
Well, I think that's about minus 1,300.
But when we get to the conference championship, that East side's got some solid teams.
I saw no value in there. You're better off just taking their money line to win every game throughout the season, even if they hit your total or my total. You're making more money than to have it being held for 6 months at plus 130 and then having to probably play Appalachian State or eventually Coastal Carolina for a second time. But we'll move on to the next team, the darling of football last year, Coastal Carolina. And speaking of win totals without much margin for error, Coastal Carolina, 10 wins. A lot of returning players. Coach is still there for now.
I think they've got a pretty weak schedule.
Yes.
They don't have to play Louisiana. Just talked about that.
Yes.
Their toughest non-conference game is probably Kansas at home. And I think that's probably a W. I don't know. It'll be interesting with a new coach in Kansas. But I just think the schedule really lines up. The one loss I've got penciled in for them is at App State.
Yes.
I don't like them going in. I think App State's defense is too strong, especially at home in North Carolina. I don't see them going in and getting that win. But other than that, I think they can run the table on their schedule.
Yeah. Offense, they return a bunch of guys. Defense, they return a bunch of guys. They should be similar to last year, unless maybe that defense dips a little. Because really, in years past, it had not shown the ability to get stops, but they showed it last year, and they're all back, so I don't see how it'd be different. I had 4 sort of 50-50 games for them. At Buffalo, that's a tough place to go. We don't know what Buffalo's going to be like. We'll get to them, but at Arkansas State, that has traditionally been a tough place to go to and play. You mentioned Appy State. That will be the game to settle pretty much everything. And then at Georgia Southern will be another tricky game with an option team. Just a hard one to play. But I have them over at 11, so that gives them, their one loss. But really, it's a good play to hit this over because I only think they could lose 2 games. So you're getting the push even if they lose 2 games and you take that over. So I think you probably ride with that over 11 here. The coach, I can't say enough about him. His offense is just, it's part option, part spread, part air raid. It's all over the place. I don't know how long he's going to be there.
This is another guy I could see finding a good job somewhere else next season.
Yes, I think the ACC and the SEC probably are sniffing around for.
But another team, Simulators, got him going 11-1.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on. And speaking of elite teams, bottom part of the Sun Belt preview might be a little boring, but we're certainly hitting the top rungs here. Appalachian State, 9 wins. Really, this is a very interesting team because I don't think either of us probably totally know what we're going to get on offense. It was a mixed bag last year. It was a little bit of a mixed bag the year before, too. But their defense is legit level, like elite. I mean, they can go play the elite teams and hold them in there. I'm very interested at that Miami-Florida game because I don't know if either team is going to be able to score points in that one. That one might be an ugly 10-9 mess. But otherwise, I'm just curious what you think you're getting from offense on Appalachian State. That would be my only question.
I just love their defense so much. And I look at their schedule. I've got them one less win than Coastal Carolina simply because they have to go to Miami in week 2.
Yes.
I think that's going to be a really tough game. But I think offensively, it's not quite the MAC in offensive scoring.
Yes.
You don't have to go out and score 40
No, these are
games.
much. All 3 of the top teams, Lafayette, Carolina, and Appy State, will play defense. Georgia Southern will play defense a little bit. Arkansas State used to play defense. I don't know what they do now, but anyone judging by Butch Jones might argue differently.
But I think if their offense can manage to scrap together 17 to 21 points, they can win a lot of games. And I still think they've got at Louisiana, and then they've got a bye, and then they host Coastal Carolina. That's their season, those 2 games right there. I think if they can get one of those 2, more importantly the Coastal Carolina game because that's an Eastern Divisional game, I still like App State at home there. So while I have App State going 10-2, I think they're going to come out as the winners of the East Division, getting that tiebreaker over Coastal Carolina.
I struggled with this one because I thought their schedule was a little tricky, especially early on. So I had them under on the 9. I had them right at 8 wins. That East Carolina game, I don't totally know what to do with. I don't know what East Carolina is. Miami, Florida, I penciled that one as a loss for sure. But, I mean, I wouldn't be stunned, too, if Appy State won that game. As good as people think Miami's going to be. I'd like to see them score offensive points on Appy State before I move that. The Marshall game is weird. Marshall was pretty solid last year. So, you don't know what you're going to get. And then they had those to open conference play. It's at Georgia State, at Louisiana Lafayette. That's a pretty tough one. Then you got the bye, and you go to Coastal Carolina. So, I think this is a really good team. They could easily win 10 games, but I think they could easily win 8 games too. So it's just if that offense makes a leap, they're probably winning 10 games.
Well, I'm interested to see if Chase Bryce, transfer out of Duke, comes in and plays at quarterback. If they can find that rhythm on offense, this could be a really scary
They will
team.
be. I say offense. They will be able to run the ball. They've been able to run the ball since they've come into the NCAA Division I. But I think the quarterback play probably will tell the tale here on Appalachian State. But I have that Louisiana Lafayette Coastal Carolina game circle. That's going to be a good little 3-week period here. Now their odds to win the Sun Belt are plus 375. Is there a little bit, or it didn't quite hit my peak number to want to hold money for that.
I would have liked about 500 here.
Yes,
but I think I might jump in on that 375 just because I think they've got the edge over Coastal Carolina getting that home game in that matchup. So I could definitely see them in that championship game, and once you get to that game, it's anybody's.
Yeah. But my problem with the 375 is they're going to have to beat Louisiana Lafayette at Lafayette. Then they're going to have to beat Coastal Carolina, and then sort of navigate the rest of their little tricky games in there and then they'll probably have to beat Louisiana Lafayette again in the championship game. That's a lot of hard wins.
Yep.
And you don't have much room for error with Coastal Carolina being in that division. And I think we're going to get into that. The teams like 1 through 5 in that division are all solid football teams, and they can all beat you. And we'll go on to the next one in there. It's probably between them and Georgia State who's going to end up finishing last in that division, and that should probably tell you how deep that division is. But Troy at 6.5 wins. Yep. I didn't see a lot of guaranteed wins here, but I think this team will be tough to play. Their offense, probably not great, but I think their D-line and their defense can keep them in games. But I don't know if they can hit that 6.5 win total mark.
I think it's going to be a little different Troy team than what we're used to seeing. We're normally used to see that kind of air raid sling the ball around Troy, and I think they're actually going to be more strongly suited to a slow it down defensive run game.
Yeah, I think they'll resemble more Appy State than Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, but I don't know if I think they can get over that 6.5 hump on that win total.
See I think this is a good team, but that's 6.5. You're asking 7 wins. They're going to have to steal one here, and they got some tough ones. That Liberty game.
Yeah.
I think
Southern Miss.
The Southern Miss, I had no clue. It's a rivalry game, so we're tossing that up, and then it's at Southern Miss. At South Carolina, I'm not saying that's a loss. I think Troy might be as good as South Carolina. We'll get to their probably disgraceful team in a couple of weeks. But, at Texas State, we're going to get to them. I don't think either of us totally know what to do with them.
Yeah, we're starting to get a little bit of the murky water here in this conference. Just because the potential's there, but the potential to be bad is also there. So you don't
always like, they might sneak up and beat Georgia Southern, and then, the next week they somehow lose to South Alabama or something because they just randomly don't play well. You just totally don't know what you're going to get, and that's why I can't hit that 7.
Yeah, I don't see them getting the 7. I'm definitely taking the under plus 105 here. I don't think they may be able to get to the 6. There's no way they're going to get the 7. Yeah. So hammer that under.
Yeah, I think the Liberty game will probably be the true test. If they can win that game, I think they probably go over. But I don't think they're going to do that. And the problem is they win that Liberty game, then they go right at Southern Miss. Yep. And I think that's where my numbers, I was like, well, they could split that, but I don't see them going 2-0. So it'll be very interesting to watch Troy this year. And then all right, now we move on to Georgia State, and this will probably be the other bottom team in that division of the Sun Belt, but I think this is a pretty solid team too. 4.5 wins is their over-under. They have a solid quarterback, pretty good D-line, skill position players, a little hot and cold on, but I think their coach is a pretty good coach. But, their schedule's pretty tough. Where did you have them on that 4.5 win? I thought it was a little low, but I think I ended up going under.
Yeah, they've got the trifecta when it comes to playing the top of the conference there. They've got to play App State, but they get them at home. But then they've got to go back-to-back weeks at Louisiana, at Coastal Carolina. But I think this is going to be a solid team, and I think they're going to find a way to scrap to get over that 4.5 for sure. The quarterback experience, all 11 starters on the offense coming back, and I think that's going to be enough to get them there. They just got to keep their head up after that non-conference schedule. Yeah. I only see them getting 1 win out of those first 4 games this season. But if they can get through those, regroup, and get ready for their schedule, I think they make a run.
Yeah, I think that's what scared me the most was this start of the schedule. I don't know what to do with Army. You never know what to do with Army totally. They could lose that game. I assume they're losing, the game at North Carolina. Charlotte is a little tricky because they're a really, really good offensive team. They don't play a lot of defense, but, there's no telling there. The talent difference isn't, so much that one side or the other you come away shocked that one wins. Then you have at Auburn, and then you have Appalachian State.
Yeah.
So, in theory, they could start 0-5, and then, you're like, oh my, what are we going to do here? And you don't know how they're going to respond. And even after that, you think they get the break at Law Monroe, which, that probably is a win. But Then we go to the Texas State team, which we get to, at Georgia State, at Louisiana Lafayette, at Coastal Carolina. I mean, this team might have 2 wins going into those last 2 games. First, Arkansas State and Troy, and those are pretty solid teams too. And you're just like, where are they definitely getting wins? Even though I think their team is pretty a solid team.
I think I'm a little higher on them than you are. I'm not sure what win total you're at, but I think I've got them right in the middle of the pack. Going about 6-6.
You have them about 6-6.
I think worst case scenario 5, but I like the over here.
Yeah, I had them right at 4. I think my tricky one was Charlotte. I think I marked that down as a loss, but I mean that could go either way. I just want to see Charlotte play because they're a very weird team. And one week they'll score 50, the next week they score 0, and I don't know which side of that I'm going to fall on. But we'll move on to the next one, Arkansas State. And an old friend of yours
yes.
Has taken over the reins here at Arkansas State. Really, for a long while, Arkansas State was one of the powers of the Sun Belt. They dropped off a little bit of late, but they usually come in with about 7-8 wins. For sure, this win total seemed a little low to me. But then I started putting the schedule together.
Yep.
And I went over, but 3.5 I barely went over. I sort of had to manipulate myself into giving them that 4th win. So where are you sitting?
I've got them a little more comfortably over the 3.5. I've got them going 6-6. I think they're going to start off pretty strong. I think they're going to get a big win against Memphis at home.
Oh, you haven't beaten Memphis.
I haven't beaten Memphis. Now, I don't think they go and win at Washington. I think Tulsa's a toss-up.
That one I think was a toss-up. That was one of those where I just sort of was like, I don't think they'll win, but they could win, but, I just don't know.
And then I think they have some other winnable games. They've got South Alabama and ULM. So I think they can get over that 3.5 for sure. I've actually got them 6-6 on my forecast.
Oh, yeah. I have them right at 4 wins. I'm very curious about the defense. Offensively, they got a very, very good quarterback. Mm-hmm. They have really good wide receivers, probably one of the best receivers in the Sun Belt. And I think the offense will be fine. Technically speaking, Butch Jones is an offensive coach. Some might argue that fact, but I think he'll be able to. But I'm very curious about this defense because it was pretty poor last year. They returned the guys, but I don't think they're very good players. So I just don't know if that defense is going to come back and haunt them. That's why I'm a little curious about that Tulsa game, see how much they give up. The Memphis game, I think they'll be able to score on Memphis, but I'm very scared. Memphis might put up one of those big rushing days on them, and then you're just in trouble. But I really am very interested with this team. I do think Butch Jones is a solid coach, and this is sort of a good place for him to be. I think he can win, 8-9 games here if he can sort of get that ball rolling and get Arkansas State sort of back into that mix, into the Sun Belt. Also, they're on the good side of the bracket.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we'll talk about a couple of these teams that might finish second to Lafayette because I just don't know really where any of these will fall. And speaking of that, Texas State. I think I talked about them to you last year a little bit.
Yeah.
I possibly gave you a lot of false hope. I was
Well,
like, I think this Texas State team's going to be good, and then they were not good. So a lot of the same people return.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I actually picked them quite a bit last year. I kept waiting for them to turn it around. Didn't ever happen last season.
Did not occur.
But I think we could see a little bit of upswing this season for sure. But I've got them finishing right around that win total at 4. I like the push, or maybe the over. Take the over and get the push. But I don't see them managing to scrape out a whole lot of that. I think they'll get Incarnate Word. I think that's a W.
Yes, I would agree.
I like them against South Alabama at home. I've also got them beating ULM at home, and I've got them taking down Georgia Southern at home. Those are the only 4 I see them being able to get this season. Maybe Georgia State.
Yes.
And I'm not sure about that road game at FIU.
Yeah, that one was a weird one that I didn't quite know what to do with. think we'll find out probably where Texas State sits. After that one, my concerns with them are quarterback play. Last year, we thought we were getting good quarterback play. We did not.
Nope.
They have the skill position guys to match up with teams, but if your quarterback's bad, those receivers don't really matter all that much because no one can get them the ball. Defensively, supposedly they have good guys there, but it was a little bit of a disappointment last year as well. So I don't know where they sit. I think this was probably my hardest one to really pick games on because I think there's talent there. I just don't know if it will result in wins. And I'm looking forward to being disappointed every week when I put them on my picks.
Hey, if they finish 4-8, they've doubled their wins from last
That's
season.
correct.
So it's improvement. And I think, when you get to the teams at this level, doubling your win total is a pretty solid season for them.
Yes.
So I think 4-8 is right around where they're going to be sitting.
Yeah, I'm a little curious about the coach. He came in with a lot of offensive guru nonsense, and he's been disappointing the last 2 years. Supposedly they have solid players there. You never totally know. You're listening to what other people say are solid players, but it's never sort of played out on the field. So I'm very curious to see if this team, another year older, with a pretty veteran team, can get some wins this year. And I think we both have the fun push. So score. Pushes.
Going out on a limb there.
All right. Georgia Southern. I'm very, very interested about this team. This is probably, it's never the elite team in the Sun Belt, though they've had some elite years. But it's a pretty consistent 7 to 10 win team year to year. So their win total sits at 5. Once again, they fall on the bad side of the Sun Belt. I think if you switched them over and traded them with a South Alabama or an Arkansas State, we'd probably be talking about those 8 wins. But because they sit on the tough side, they're at 5.5 wins. So what do you make of Georgia Southern here?
I look at this schedule. It's pretty rough. I think a really telling game is that week 2 at FAU.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see what happens there. If they can come out of that game with a win, and then look past Arkansas, look past Louisiana, I think you can chalk those up as losses, and then try to turn it around. I don't think they're going to match the success they had last season. But that 5.5 is tough because I've got them right in that window. But I don't see them getting the 6, so I'm going to have to go with the under there, 4-8.
I went the other way. I went right at 6 wins. Their schedule's tough. I had to finagle it a little bit, but their defense is always solid. They have a really good coach, and that option offense is just always really, really tough to prepare for, and they run it perfectly. They do have a new quarterback running it, but that never factors to me very much in an offense. Those guys have 3 reads, and, it's not like, they're reading pass plays down the field. So you could plug and play pretty easy. Now, some of them run it better than others. But I think the quarterback play will be good. Their defense will be solid. Schedule-wise, that's where it gets a little tricky. You mentioned the FAU game. That'll be really important to see if they hit that over. If they can win that one, Arkansas, I put as a 50-50, but a 50-50 as a loss, because I don't think we know what Arkansas is. Last year, but
I didn't think
they weren't even good last year. They just played a lot of close games last year.
I've actually got them losing at Troy.
Yes,
I think that's another tough one.
marked. That's the thing. You have that at Troy game. I had that at Texas State game. Now they do have, Coastal's at home, Georgia State's at home, Louisiana Lafayette's at home. So maybe they string a win there, but then they might go to at Texas State and lose that one. You never really know. That's why it's really, really hard to sort of pick this team. But, I sort of just went with, they usually win 6 games. So, coach is good, defense good, offense solid. I go with the true number here instead of like a Georgia State where I went a little under on that one. I trust Georgia Southern system. All right, we're going to get into the bottom feeders here. South Alabama. This win total is obviously a little elevated because they are on the bad side. but I don't see much here.
I was surprised to see the
very
4.5,
shocked at
honestly.
the 4.5. But then I started measuring it out. I did go under, but I did have them at 3. So,
Well-
I didn't think it was going to be a complete debacle. Totally new coach. We don't know much about him.
I've got them at 3 and 9, and that's even with them managing to win the opener against
Yes.
Southern Miss at home.
Yes, that's correct. I have them exactly as you, 3 and 9.
And I don't even know if they can get that one.
Well, I didn't even pencil in like an automatic at Bowling Green because I don't know what South Alabama's level is. I know what Bowling Green's level is, but it wouldn't totally stun me if South Alabama's level is exactly the same. I mean, I don't know what they're good at. They have a pretty solid receiver, but nothing is good. Their O-line is bad. Their D-line is bad. Their quarterback is not that good. Their running back is not that good. So I just don't know really where to pencil in wins. I will say Tennessee did a great job of scheduling both Bowling Green and South Alabama onto their schedule. So 2 wins there, 4 wins from a bowl, baby. Good scheduling there. So what do you make of this South Alabama team? Anything?
No, I really don't have a whole lot on them. I look at that schedule and I don't see them piecing together to enough to get over that 4.5. They're definitely not going to get 5.
Yes.
They may get to 4 if they win 1 or 2 that they're not supposed to. I'd actually probably see 2 before I'd see 4.
Yeah. I was very stunned at the 4-win projection. I had a lot of different ones. PFF had them around 4. Phil Steele had them around 4. And I just didn't totally see it. I mean, you give them Bowling Green, you give them Alcorn State, and then I guess they're giving them at Law Monroe. We'll get to them next. But I just didn't see 4 in there. Maybe Southern Miss is extremely awful, but I can't believe they are so extremely awful to South Alabama bad. So just really weird, but I'm going under 3 on there. And I think this might actually be contender for the worst team because we're going to get to our next one. It might be the most interesting, atrocious team I've ever seen because I don't think any player is a legit, true, hardcore D1 player, but
Their coaches sure are.
their coaches have been and have won a lot of games.
Yep.
They bring in Terry Bowden to take over as head coach, and I think more shocking is the offensive coordinator is Rich Rodriguez.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if they have the players that can win games. Terry wasn't all that great at Akron, but he has won games in the SEC. Rich Rodriguez has won numerous games until he randomly went to Michigan. So what do you make of this Law Monroe team?
I honestly don't think they're going to do a whole lot better than South Alabama. I actually have them going 2 and 10.
Yes.
I do have them getting the win total,
Yes.
1.5. That all depends on that head-to-head matchup where they host South Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be the swing game between who gets the bottom in this conference for sure. Just because looking at outside of Jackson State
Dion's team?
and maybe South Alabama, where do you find your wins?
Yes.
You've got at Kentucky, you've got Troy, you've got Coastal, Georgia State, Liberty, at App State, at Texas State, maybe Arkansas State,
Yes.
At LSU, Louisiana to finish
Yes.
the season. There are not many wins on this schedule,
No,
and even that Jackson State one, I don't think is a
Yes.
certain.
No, I put Jackson State as a win, but
Yeah.
it was in a very light pencil. But I'm like you. I have them at 2 wins. I had them beating South Alabama, and I have them in the Jackson State win, but I couldn't find another one. I just don't think they're quite, even with their coaching staff, on the level of like an Arkansas State or a Texas State to steal those kinds of wins.
Yeah.
And those would be the bottom feeders. They don't have a chance versus any of those top elite teams. Maybe in 3 years, but I don't know if those guys are going to be around in 3 years. Maybe there was an influx of money in Louisiana Monroe that I don't know about. Judging from the past 50 years of watching them play football, I'm not sure that money came in. So anyway, I do have them over. I am interested, probably early on, just to see what it looks like. Those are some big name coaches. but I just don't think the players are there for them to do much. And the bottom half here, South Alabama, La Monroe, really sort of poor teams. So I think Louisiana Lafayette, probably not the favorite to win this Sun Belt, but I think they have the easiest road to a championship game,
Yep.
and that's sort of half the ball there, because then it's just a one-game playoff. Looking at the Sun Belt odds, who do you like? Maybe a long shot, and then who do you really like? Who you think will win it?
My long shot would probably be I don't think they're a long shot, but I like App State.
Yes,
I really do. They're not the dark horse, but I think they've got a tough path, and like you said, they probably have to play Louisiana twice to win that conference championship. Louisiana is my pick to win it all. I think they've got a really good coach, and they've got the experience, and I think they've got the easiest path, and they'll be ready. But I like App State coming out of the East over Coastal. I just think that home game in between those two is going to be the deciding factor.
Yeah, definitely. All right, that's our show for today. Be sure to catch us next week. We got Conference USA and the AAC, so that'll be a fun breakdown. A lot of fun teams in those two conferences. We're going to come to you every day for the next couple weeks on Thursday to have all the conference breakdowns, and then we'll start with the NFL, I think, in about 2 weeks.
I tell you what, it's nice to get in a good preseason schedule before we get into the games. We have a little bit of an off season, and fall practice is firing up, so I'm getting really excited, starting to get that itch.
Yes, be sure to join us on all the shows on Football Time and the Green Light Network. That's our show.
Green Light Network presents Football Time.